From the moment Ethan Harper saw the men sprawled across the alleyway, he felt his heart tighten in a way he couldn't ignore. Something about the stranger's helpless posture, the blood seeping through his shirt, made Ethan's chest constrict with an urgency that demanded action. His 7-year-old daughter, Lily, clung to his hand, her wide eyes mirroring his shock. "Dad, should we call someone?" she whispered, her small voice trembling. Ethan shook his head slightly, knowing that waiting for emergency responders could cost the men his life. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Ethan had always tried to shield Lily from the darker side of the world. As a single dad after his wife passed away 5 years ago, his focus had been on creating a safe, happy life for his daughter. But now, standing in the dim glow of the alleyway, he realized that life often forced you into impossible choices, and protecting someone sometimes meant risking everything. He knelt beside the stranger. The man was barely conscious, his skin pale and clammy, and his shallow breaths came in jagged gasps. Ethan quickly assessed the situation. "Lily, stay back, okay? Watch me," he instructed gently. Lily nodded, gripping a small plush toy tightly. Ethan's hands shook slightly as he unzipped his jacket and pressed it to the man's wound, applying as much pressure as he could to slow the bleeding. "Who are you?" Ethan asked the stranger, though he knew it was unlikely he'd get a coherent answer. The man's lips moved, barely audible. "Help me, please." Ethan didn't need more convincing. He hoisted the man over his shoulder with difficulty, he was heavier than he looked, and started running toward his car parked a few blocks away. Lily ran beside him, shouting words of encouragement, though fear laced her voice. Every step felt like a race against death. Once in the car, Ethan carefully laid the man on the back seat. Lily found a blanket in the trunk and draped it over him, murmuring, "It's okay, mister, we're here." The man's eyes fluttered open briefly, filled with a combination of confusion and relief. "Thank you," he croaked. Ethan started the engine and drove toward the nearest hospital, feeling every second drag like an eternity. At the hospital, nurses quickly took over, and Ethan explained the situation while Lily clung to his side. One of the doctors, Dr. Marissa Lane, glanced at him with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "You two acted fast. It probably saved his life," she said. Ethan nodded, trying to keep his emotions in check. But as they waited in the sterile, white hallway, the reality of the situation sank in. They had just risked everything for a man they didn't even know, and yet the warmth in his eyes during those fleeting moments reminded Ethan why kindness mattered, even when it demanded courage. Lily sat beside him, tracing patterns on his sleeve with her small fingers. "Dad, why did we help him?" she asked softly. Ethan looked down at her, his chest tight with emotion. "Because it's the right thing to do, sweetheart. Sometimes the world isn't fair, and we can't change everything, but we can make a difference where we can." The next few days were a whirlwind. Ethan and Lily returned home, but their thoughts kept drifting back to the stranger, whose name they finally learned was Daniel Pierce. He was a man in his late 30s, struggling with a string of misfortunes that had led him to that alley. His car had broken down earlier that night, and while seeking help, he had been attacked by a mugger. Daniel had no family nearby, and for the first time in years, he realized he wasn't entirely alone. Over the coming week, Ethan received a call from Daniel's hospital room. "Ethan. Lily. I don't know how to thank you enough," Daniel said, his voice still weak but steadier. I don't have anyone, but you too, you saved me. You didn't just save my life, you reminded me that people can still care." Lily bounced excitedly beside Ethan as he recounted the conversation. "Dad, he sounds like a superhero," she exclaimed. Ethan chuckled softly, ruffling her hair. "Sometimes superheroes wear no capes, Lily. Sometimes, they just do the right thing, even when it's hard." When Daniel was discharged, Ethan invited him over for dinner. Lily immediately took to him, peppering him with questions about his favorite foods, hobbies, and even his favorite cartoons. Daniel laughed genuinely for the first time in what felt like years, and Ethan realized that their home, once just a small bubble of father-daughter love, was expanding to include someone else who desperately needed connection. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel slowly regained his strength. He and Ethan began forming a friendship rooted in gratitude and shared humanity. Daniel, humbled by the experience, started volunteering at local shelters, inspired by the compassion he had received. Ethan, who had long worried about exposing Lily to the hardships of life, realized that through this experience, he was teaching her one of the most important lessons of all: courage and empathy often come in the moments when life is toughest. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Daniel turned to Ethan. "I don't know if I can ever repay you, but I want to help others like you helped me." Ethan smiled, placing a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You already are. That's more than enough." Lily leaned between them, her small arms wrapping around both men. "We're a team now," she declared, her eyes shining with innocent conviction. And in that moment, the bond formed from an alleyway encounter, a single act of courage, and an unwavering willingness to help, solidified into something profound, a reminder that even in a world full of uncertainties, one act of kindness can create ripples that change lives forever. Months later, Daniel had found a modest apartment nearby and had started rebuilding his life. But he remained closely connected to Ethan and Lily, often sharing meals, stories, and laughter that had been absent from his life for far too long. Ethan sometimes marveled at how one night could alter the trajectory of 3 lives, reminding him that destiny often works in mysterious ways. The story of Ethan, Lily, and Daniel became quietly known in their neighborhood. People spoke of the courage and empathy shown by a single dad and his young daughter. They didn't do it for recognition or reward, they acted out of compassion. Yet, their actions left an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed their story, silently inspiring others to notice, to care, and to act. Years later, Lily, now a teenager, would often ask her dad about that night. "Dad, do you remember the men we saved?" she'd ask, eyes bright with curiosity. Ethan would nod, his heart swelling with pride and love. "I do, Lily. And I also remember what you said when we wrapped him in that blanket. You told him everything would be okay. That's why he survived. Because you believed in him." It was a simple lesson, yet it carried a lifetime of meaning. Sometimes, saving a life doesn't require extraordinary power, it requires a compassionate heart and the courage to step forward when it matters most. Ethan Harper, his daughter Lily, and the men they rescued, Daniel Pierce, would always share a bond forged in crisis, strengthened by empathy, and defined by the quiet heroism of ordinary people making extraordinary choices. And as the sun set behind the Willow Street houses, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Ethan looked at Lily and Daniel and thought, maybe the world isn't perfect, but this, right here, is proof that goodness still exists, and it can start with just one brave act.